It's averaged out that during the battle, the height of the battle, 10,000 rounds of ammunition are fired every minute. So even if we just count it out, right, 5 minutes, 50,000 rounds, 10 minutes, 100,000 rounds of ammunition flying through the air into Fredericksburg. Places that we walk, shop, eat, enjoy, were places of extreme horror on December 13th, 1862. The Confederates, by and large, suffer about 1,000 losses in and around the Marye's Heights sector, the majority of which came up on the hill behind us. Why?
Union artillery?
Union artillery, yeah. Why else might you have Confederate casualties higher up there than, say, down here?
Exposed.
Not
Yeah.
concealed.
You're not concealed, you're exposed, right? So what's the trick if you're assigned to this area of the battlefield?
Down the road.
Somersaults. Get down into the road, right? Lieutenant Colonel Joseph Webb of the 27th North Carolina, one of the second waves of Confederates to come into this road, had this to say.
The whole regiment set up a yell and set off in double quick to the bottom of the hill. We lost some 6 or 8 men wounded as we went into position. After we started, I dismissed all thought of getting hurt, and when we got behind the stone fence, I felt pretty much at home, for I knew I was safe, unless I was foolhardily enough to unexpectedly expose myself above the fence, a thing I had but little inclination to do. Most of those who were killed and wounded after we got behind the fence did it by their own carelessness. The men all seemed cool and went to work as deliberately as if General Lee had hired them by the job.
And so the Confederate line holds. It never wavers, it never buckles, there's never really any concern. Later on in the day, when Robert E. Lee sees Federal forces marshaling for yet another attack, he turns to James Longstreet, who commands these Confederates, and he expresses a concern for what's about to happen. The Confederate line has held, but he says, "General, they're massing very heavily and will break your line, I am afraid." And James Longstreet responds, somewhat famously, "If you give me enough ammunition, I will kill them all before they reach my line." And that's what's going on here. This is the measure of this place, right? How many letters were written during the Civil War, ish? A lot, 500 million. And so I want to take a few minutes off the cuff, talk about that statue. One of the most famous moments of the Battle of Fredericksburg is the Angel of Marye's Heights. Richard Kirkland, 19 years old, from Camden, South Carolina, December 14th, 1862, is known to have jumped over the wall with canteens to give water to wounded soldiers. I think we can all agree that that's a pretty heartwarming story. Kirkland is killed in September 1863. He does not survive the war. 500 million letters are written during the Civil War. I have not found a single wartime mention of that happening. Not a single one. 500 million letters, 200,000 people at this battle, and no one talked about it. Does that mean it didn't happen? Not necessarily. But is it important as facts grow, right? And they morph, and they take on stories of their lives of their own, right? Because what we do know, for sure, is that there were angels of mercy who hopped over the wall. Walt Whitman, the famed poet who was at Chatham, interviews a wounded Union soldier who says that an old man with wiry, long gray hair helped him out. Richard Kirkland, 19 years old, doesn't match that description. So it doesn't mean it didn't happen, right? But these stories, they increase as time goes on. The Kirkland story first told around 1878, picked up in 1880, and then it grows and it grows and it grows until 1962, when a South Carolinian congressman wants to sponsor a monument on this property. The University of Mary Washington, which at the time owned the property, is more than happy to do that, because if they don't, an apartment complex is going up right here. So we'll be thankful that that happens. And that statue is dedicated in November 1965. It's the last thing Virginia does to commemorate the centennial of the Civil War. And so as we stare at the Kirkland Monument, and we ruminate on language, and we ruminate on words, and we ruminate on facts, right? Isn't it interesting that not a single wartime letter has emerged detailing that story? I'm still looking, right? I look pretty frequently. If you find one, you let me know. But this place reminds us that there's a whole lot still to be learned about this battle. I'm willing to bet most of you have read a few books about this place. right? Or you've attended every single Park Service program that we put on. But we're still learning about this place, which is so fascinating to me.